Good morning. So I wonder if anyone has watched the Trump and Emmanuel Macron press conference, I suppose you call it. It's fascinating to watch, right? So it's a little bit difficult, right? Because Macron he speaks in French and he speaks in English. And when he's speaking in French, obviously there's a translator there, so take everything with a pinch of salt. But the dynamic that is there is very interesting, and what it looks like Trump is setting up is a fascinating sealing of the situation that allows everybody to save face. Okay, so what he's suggesting is that all the cards on the table. Russia probably, it's not explicit yet, but probably going to take up some land in Ukraine, right? Ukraine, Zelensky has to go. There has to be a vote. There has to be an election there. And then what Trump is suggesting is that America, to recoup some of the hundreds of billions that they've given to Ukraine, will get that back through minerals, natural minerals and resources that are in Ukraine, right? And going along with that, America will essentially end up building back up Ukraine again, or parts of Ukraine. And what he said, which is telling, which will allow to assuage the egos of European leaders, right? In this case, France and Macron. He's suggesting that America will be in Ukraine getting their money back, essentially. But Europe will make sure that Russia don't engage in any further military skirmishes or scenarios, right, in Ukraine. That's a win-win for everyone, right? It's a win-win for everyone. And I think that it'll be very hard for European leaders to ignore, because they're not being hung out to dry, at least not in this scenario, right? Trump is making them look stronger than they are in reality, right? By saying, look, we'll be in there collecting the minerals and resources from Ukraine, but Europe, they'll be the ones that will be assuring the safety of everyone in the area, right? And it's fascinating as well, because you have Macron and Keir Starmer, who've been coming out and been bold about it, right? By stating that we'll have boots on the ground in Ukraine, we support Ukraine, we'll back Ukraine, we're willing to send soldiers over there. And now, while standing beside Trump, Macron has come out, and if you watch the way he delivers these things, right, he really wants to convince you that this is what was meant. He's suggesting that we said we'd have boots on the ground, not to engage in a military fight or to back sides in that regard. What we meant was we'll have boots on the ground in order to assure peace. So once a deal has been made and peace has been brought about, then we will have our soldiers over there just to maintain the peace. That's what we meant. We didn't mean we were getting involved in the military fight, right? We meant we'd only put soldiers in there once a peace had been brokered, and peace in order to sustain the peace in the region, right? Fascinating. Fascinating. Leader after leader after leader you've seen go to the White House, speak with Trump privately, and then come out and in the press conference publicly capitulate, right? Publicly capitulate to everything that Trump is saying. And if you watch the Macron one, it's interesting, because you can clearly see he speaks probably twice the amount of time that Trump does, because he has to, right? Trump doesn't have to please people. He's, to a degree, right? He says what he wants to say. It's pretty clear, right? It's pretty transparent in the words that he's using, right? Doesn't mean he's telling the truth, but just in his delivery. They're straightforward answers. Macron is, the words he's using, the terminology, they're ambiguous. It's ambiguous in how he's speaking, right? And it looks very much like he's trying to please two sides at the same time by saying enough to sound like he's in agreement with Trump, but also saying enough to make it look like he's not totally in line with Trump, and that he's come to these decisions by himself and with the support of the EU, right? You can clearly see the man is ripped. He's torn, right? So I would love to know what Trump has on these people. And I would imagine a lot of it has to do with the USAID and further, right? That's like indicative of, I think, what is going to follow. And I think Trump probably has a load, nearly all of these EU leaders over a barrel, right? Because I think I get the sense from watching this that not necessarily the outcome is already determined, but all of the information that is needed in order for Trump to be confident and throwing his weight around and forcing these people into accepting the decisions he's after making, that's already known. Like, I don't think there's anything new for Donald Trump to discover. I think he already has the bullets in the chamber for each of these people, right? And the risk for them, and you can see it in Macron as well, because he looks a little bit nervous. He's just at the start of the press conference. Trump is talking first. He's kind of, what's he going to do to me? Is he going to turn around and say some wild things about me, right? And then Trump doesn't. He commends Macron for getting the Notre Dame Cathedral built again, and Macron kind of softens a bit. He turns towards Trump when he's speaking and he's smiling. He's like, okay, this is the feeling I get watching it, right? I'd recommend people to watch it. And not necessarily listen to the words, do that too, right? But watch who's in control in this situation. It's not Emmanuel Macron, right? It's Donald Trump. And you can see this in how Macron speaks, how he acts, how he responds to Donald Trump, how he wishes to initiate and draw Donald Trump's attention, right? Fascinating watch. But Trump throws in a few little things. He's saying, look, it's great. You got the Notre Dame thing built in 5 years. Look, maybe it took a little bit long, but you got it done. Great stuff. But he also says that Macron comes out and says, yeah, look, thank you for that. And we appreciate it. And we also appreciate the fact that there was a lot of American money pumped into getting that back up and running. And then Trump says there were people that wanted to change the Notre Dame Cathedral, but we emphasize, no, it needs to be rebuilt the way it was. It's not going to be changed, right? Which is fascinating. Fascinating. So I would recommend people to watch that, in light of the fact that we may have an Irish representative going over there, and I think they are absolutely going to be schooled if they get drawn out into a public press conference. And I think double-edged sword. There's two ways to go, right? So either Trump makes an example of Micheál Martin or Simon Harris by not inviting them, although I think that's a missed opportunity. I think it's a missed opportunity. And again, look, I'm presupposing that Trump has any real interest in Ireland, or Europe as a whole, which he has said he has, right? J.D. Vance has said the same thing, or they're making noises to that effect, right? So I think best case scenario is bring them over and do the very same thing you do to Macron. Have them publicly capitulate to you. And if people are watching this with switched on eyes, you are watching these people fold up and bend the knee publicly to Donald Trump in their actions, in their delivery, in their tone, in their childlike behavior to being around someone who is leading this conversation and who already has these decisions made, right? He's getting you to do the very same thing publicly. And I think that'd be amazing to see. And I would welcome that more than not inviting them all together. But we'll see what happens. I would love to see Micheál Martin be pulled out publicly and have some of that pressure put on him, right? Or even Simon Harris, or whatever the case is. But just have an Irish representative be drawn over the coals publicly, as you're seeing with each individual head of state, to different degrees, right? To different degrees. So we will see. I would recommend that people watch it, though. in line of what I'm saying, right? That you are absolutely watching these European leaders. Macron being an example, and Macron being French as well, right? So he's going to have a lot more sway and a lot more confidence in pushing back against Trump. You see none of that. So what are Irish people? What are the Irish representatives going to have? Absolutely none. Absolutely nothing. They are going to capitulate publicly, and that'll trickle down into. It'll have to be covered in Ireland. And I would recommend people watch all these things instead of reading the news headlines. Watch them. That's what you're watching. You're watching a father show his young son how it's done, right? And whatever comes of it it'll be what it is, right? But as of now, that is what you're watching. You're watching someone come in and dominate the show, and it's good to watch.